All right, let's get right into this. We're looking at a huge public health story unfolding in Botswana, one where scientists are using a really clever idea, basically taking a before picture to see if they're winning a fight against a deadly disease.
So first, let's talk about the stakes here, because they are incredibly high. In Botswana, the number one cancer killer of women isn't what you might expect. It's cervical cancer. And the key word, the most important word here, is preventable. This is a battle that absolutely can be won.
But there's a really big complication. Botswana also has a high rate of HIV. And get this, for women living with HIV, the risk of getting cervical cancer skyrockets. It's nearly 5 times higher. So you're not just fighting one crisis, you're fighting two at the same time.
Okay, so to really get why this solution is so smart, we first have to wrap our heads around the problem. Let's break down how these two viruses, HPV and HIV, team up to create this perfect storm.
So it all starts with HPV, the human papillomavirus. That's the virus that causes almost all cases of cervical cancer. Now, here's where the second problem comes in. With so many people in Botswana living with HIV, their immune systems are weakened. That makes it so much harder for the body to fight off that initial HPV infection, which then lets the virus stick around and, eventually turn into cancer.
So, faced with this massive challenge, what did Botswana do? They didn't just sit back. They brought out one of the biggest guns in public health, a national vaccination program. Back in 2015, the country launched this nationwide HPV vaccine program targeting young girls aged 9 to 13. The whole idea was simple: get them vaccinated before they're likely to be exposed to the virus. And the rollout? It was incredible. In the very first year, they reached over 90% of all the eligible girls. Just amazing.
And this wasn't just a big deal for Botswana. It was a huge deal for all of Africa. At the time, they were only the second country on the entire continent to do this, really setting an example and becoming a leader in public health.
But this brings up a really important scientific question. So you've launched this massive, life-saving program. That's great. But years down the road, how do you actually prove it's working? How can you be sure you're making a difference? Just think about it for a second. If you want to measure the impact of any big change, a new diet, a new workout plan, anything, what's the one thing you absolutely have to know if it worked? Exactly. You need a before picture, a baseline, a clear snapshot of what things were like before you started. And capturing that exact snapshot is precisely what a team of researchers set out to do.
So here's how they did it. The goal was to figure out the HPV rates in the very last group of young women who were just a little too old for that new vaccine program. So they found 806 women, all between 18 and 22, and this is key. They compared two groups within that: 306 women living with HIV and 500 women who weren't. This study, done between 2019 and 2021, was designed to be that perfect before picture.
So what did that picture of the pre-vaccine world actually look like? Well, the numbers are pretty jarring, and honestly, they show exactly why this vaccine is so incredibly important. First, just look at the rates for any kind of HPV. Among the young women living with HIV, a staggering 82.7% had an HPV infection. Compare that to 63% for women without HIV. I mean, that's a huge difference right off the bat. But what about the specific high-risk types that the vaccine is built to stop? Well, it's the exact same story. The burden was so much higher for women with HIV. More than a third of them were infected with a vaccine-preventable type, compared to about a fifth of the women without HIV. This table just lays it all out, crystal clear. Look, across every single category, any HPV, the really high-risk types, and the types the vaccine targets, the rate was just way, way higher in women living with HIV. It paints a perfect picture of the challenge they were up against. And what's really fascinating is that the study found it wasn't just about the number of infections. It was also about the types of HPV. The most common dangerous strains were actually different between the two groups. That kind of granular detail is gold for public health officials trying to understand the enemy they're fighting.
So here's the bottom line. This whole study, this before picture, it wasn't just for a scientific journal. No, this is a practical, powerful tool. It's basically a roadmap that's going to guide Botswana's fight against cancer for years. The researchers themselves said it best. This gives them that essential baseline data. Without it, you're just flying blind, hoping for the best. But with it,
You can measure your success with precision. And we won't even have to wait that long to see the results. In just another 3 or 4 years, those first girls who got the vaccine back in 2015, they'll be the same age as the women in the study. So officials can then go and test them, create the after picture, and see just how much HPV rates have plummeted. And this whole process, it has a name: Vaccine Impact Monitoring. It's the gold standard in public health. It's all about using hard data to prove without a doubt that what you're doing is working in the real world and actually saving lives.
So that's where we'll leave it. The before picture is clear, and yeah, it's a little sobering. But it gives us a benchmark for hope. Because of this brilliant research and a really bold public health vision, the question isn't if things will get better anymore, it's how much better. What is that after picture going to look like for a whole generation of girls in Botswana? We're about to find out.